Hello, this is Greg Smalley on Pod 366, a weird movies podcast, joined today, as I often am, by Giles Edwards. And
Hello.
later today, we are going to have, well, yes, today, for you, we're going to have special guest, the uh, crew from the new film Love and Work. We'll have director Pete Ohs and actors, and some of them are also writers, Stephanie Hunt, Will Maddin, and Frank Mosely. That's going to be a large crew for the second half of this podcast. And the first half, we're just going to quickly talk about some new releases and news this week. No real news to report on, so it's only new releases. And most of them are things we've discussed before, but not everything. There's some surprises. Definitely one surprise because it simply popped up without much, without any real warning beforehand. I just got a email notice that this little movie was out. And before we say what it is, Giles, will you describe to listeners who can't see, can you hope or even venture to describe what we're looking at?
I will do my darndest and hope that the listeners and viewers have some awareness of German expressionist film. Definitely heavy doses of that, almost like the whole thing, I could be convinced. In the background, we have a jagged, tilty, very stylized silhouette of a row of towers, castle formation, like a medieval town kind of thing. And creeping toward the foreground, there's a archway with dark, ill-shaped pillars, and standing in the center, casting an incongruous shadow, and one of the few otherwise uninterrupted bursts of light here is looks like a cloaked gentleman with distorted features, a crown, a very gothic looking crown, if I may say so, staring hard to say, as the eyes are rather ill defined, as are much of the specifics of many of the points in this image, even, disregarding the angularity of a lot of the silhouette and darkness. And all told, I'm going to guess that this isn't a directly human constructed film still.
No, it was sort of like, well, what we're looking at officially is the Epic of Gilgamesh from Zeb Haradon, who was a guest of ours several episodes ago with his, he was on promoting his artificial intelligence generated movie, The Eternal Recurrence, which is, he's still submitting to film festivals. And however, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he put up on YouTube this free feature-length AI-generated movie, The Epic of Gilgamesh. And as we can see from this still is definitely one of the things he trained it on was most certainly the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, because that the backdrop there is medieval, not Babylonian, and really was inspired by Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, as is, I think, the makeup on the king, although you can't see it very closely in this still. There are some other scenes where he has that dramatic black and white makeup with the sunken eye sockets.
Yeah.
Very similar to Caligari. So, Giles, did you watch the trailer to this?
Oh, I didn't. I caught some of the. No, I clicked through to get a feel for it. The two variants which currently exist on YouTube, but unfortunately, I did not check out the trailer. Judging from the bits I've seen, I was quite pleased with the overall aesthetic, but I'm also a junkie for movies from the 20s and early 30s, and so that is quite obviously where he drew a lot of his imagery and sequences from.
So I think the trailer is just basically the opening introduction, which describes this as the premise is that this is a movie created by ancient Babylonians using primitive movie type technology that has just been rediscovered and restored, and modern scientists have just figured out how to use this and to turn it into film. And the other part about it is it claims that this tale movie, there are lots of different versions of the Epic of Gilgamesh, ancient Babylonian technology movie created, and that they've kind of merged them together to create one long continuous narrative, which explains why the style keeps changing. So this expressionist style is one of the styles. There's another style where Gilgamesh is played by a gorilla. And then there are some, although most of it is black and white, there are some color sequences as well, which I don't know if they're meant to be.
Oh, yeah, it looks like, yeah, just looking at this, that hand tinting process that occurred back in ancient Babylonian times, as we all know.
And so the other thing to know about this is there are two versions, which will provide links to both of them. There's a complete version, and then there's a family-friendly version, because the complete version has about 4 minutes of footage, which is not definitely safe for work. There are some pseudo-pornographic images in there, and also some strong violence. And you know, in regards to the pornographic images, I don't know if anybody out of curiosity has ever looked up AI generated pornography. I did. It ain't a pretty thing. They don't, you know how AI,
The research you do for the website, Greg, is commendable.
you know how AI doesn't get fingers right?
Oh, I bet there are lots of things they don't get right.
It's worse with genitalia. It's even worse with genitalia. So that ain't pretty.
Delightful.
But it's not, you know, this stuff does not look like, you know, real hardcore porn. But
Yeah, yes, this is, yeah, not for certain types of thrill seekers.
yeah, if you squint your eyes, though, you know what's going on. It looks like it's been, you know, kind of blurred out maybe or something. So that's why there's a family safe version also up, along with the other version. And it's about, the full version is about 4 minutes longer. So apparently there was a lot of stuff in there that AI spit out that may not be entirely appropriate for kids. So just something to keep in mind. So that's up on YouTube for free now, and just popped up with no notice and no real promotion. And you can check it out. It's only been up a couple days. It has less than 100 views so far. By the time you see this, maybe soon afterwards, it will be well into the hundreds or thousands. Let's hope. Because I do like what Zeb's doing with AI, and it's almost free. You know, it just takes his time, and doesn't have to pay actors or anything. So he and a small number of other, Damon Packard is also doing a lot of this AI stuff. You know, they can produce movies now for next to no cost, and they're doing interesting work. Not to say everybody who's doing AI movies is doing interesting work. I think you have to have a certain sensibility and be really into leaning into the sort of surreal mistakes that AI makes to make something interesting. But moving on to more prominent releases, a Blu-ray release that we're going to discuss about, well, Giles, again, perhaps you will feel anxious to describe the cover that we're looking for here.
Okay, picture, if you will,
Uh,
a framework, a window frame style thing with vining plants weaving around it, and centered in this frame is a young brunette, pale, paler even than her white dress, it would seem, paler or as pale as the majestic spiking emerging from her head like a crown, and she's staring off boldly, inspirationally into the upper right hand, middle to far distance, holding in her two hands a long firearm that looks like a pastiche of several standard war rifles that might have hailed, as far back as the early 20th century. And festooned around her within this frame are a number of open-faced flowers that if I had the remotest knowledge of any form of botany I could probably name, I'd say sunflowers, but I might be mistaken.
Daisies, large
Daisies,
daisies.
large daisies, long-petaled sunflowers, I don't know, but they're flowers that are pale as well. Much contrast between black and white with some smatterings of gray between the two, creating a sharp but blurry image, as is something we've come to find typical with the director in question.
Who is?
This director is Guy Maddin.
Yeah, Guy Maddin's Archangel out from Kino. Now, of course, Kino Lorber had just put out probably 6 months prior the Guy Maddin's first movie, Tales from the Gimli Hospital, and now they're putting out his second movie, Archangel, which leads me to suspect that perhaps in another several months we're going to see Guy Maddin's third movie, Careful, which Kino Lorber, I believe, has the rights to currently through their subsidiary Zeitgeist, who originally published all the early Guy Maddin movies. And Zeitgeist, just as a side note, also published the early Jan Svankmajer movies, which would be a great thing to see turn up on Blu-ray, because he is very much, Jan Svankmajer is very much underrepresented on Blu-ray, and his discs are going out, DVDs are going out of print, and it's definitely time for some more Svankmajer. So Kino Lorber, if that's within your power, you know that people want it.
Oh wow, this predates Twilight of the Ice Nymphs, which
Well,
I only know that title because I think when I purchased a DVD of Archangel to review, it came in a double feature pack that had the rather dissimilar color film whose title I just mentioned.
Twilight of the Ice Nymphs also comes to mind because if they're going to republish Guy Maddin's movies in sequence, I wonder what they're going to do about that, because they'll probably put it on as a second feature on something, because I don't think anybody wants to see Twilight of the on its own. Twilight of the Night Ice Nymphs is a great title, but it's really Guy Maddin's only absolute failure of a movie. It was a mess. He did not get what he wanted. He didn't realize his vision. The sound is all wrong. He had to dub over some of the actors. And while it looks good and has a really good actor and Frank Gorshin, old Frank Gorshin, and Shelley Long and some ostriches, it didn't work out. But this one I liked quite a bit. His sophomore feature. Usually, you expect a sophomore slump, and I thought that Maddin actually, it's at least as good as Tales from the Gimli Hospital, maybe better. Instead of a silent film, it's an early talkie. It's a little rough. There are some ideas that don't work, but in general, it's an amnesia-themed feature, and the setting is Archangel, Russia, and a little historical tidbit. World War One had ended, but the news did not reach all the way to this remote corner of Russia. So they continued fighting the war for several weeks or months after the war had actually ended and armistice had been signed. They still had fighting going on in Archangel, Russia, which is a very remote, wintry location. Our hero goes there, has amnesia, falls in.
And another person there has amnesia.
And there's a lot of amnesia going on, which allows Guy to just go kind of crazy with the dreaminess. And again, as I said, it's not, there's some things that don't work in it. He took a lot of big swings, but I liked it overall. And I really like this movie. And it
Yeah,
is one of our canonized weird movies. So, Giles,
one of the earliest too, at number 10, I think.
yeah, one of the, yes.
Yeah, I watched it a few years ago for the new review for our upcoming. Oh, am I?
Yeah,
Have I been muted?
no, you're on.
Okay. Sorry about that. For the upcoming big book, and yes, a lot of big swings, and as happens with that, some misses. I was pleased, however. I guess in some ways I'm a more pedestrian film viewer than others. I did appreciate that the narrative in question was largely coherent and followable. Um, Sometimes I have less patience for when writer directors go for the super dream kind of experience where nothing necessarily correlates because everything correlates. I enjoy that less than many of the 366 readers and reviewers here, but this one was a nice balance between those two conflicting narrative trends. So definitely pleased to have caught that myself.
Yeah, I'd say Guy Maddin usually, at least his, not everything, but at least his early work often has a through plot line. And what he does is makes it so melodramatic and so full of twists and coincidences and crazy plot items that it becomes uh, a little confusing, but it is definitely all written out and all makes sense if you follow it.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
this. So yeah, check out Arc. I don't think that there's anything new on this except he has a new Maddin recorded a new commentary for it.
Yeah, that looked like, and that is probably interesting enough. And yeah, to see, shall we say, a nice transfer of this. I'll be interested to see what elements are archaic on purpose and what happened, post, during distribution for the okay but not great DVD release that this had been languishing on for some time.
All right. So that's probably the big release of the week on physical media. There's also this one, which we've discussed before, and Giles has actually described this image before. So if you want to describe it again, Giles, you can probably be much quicker about it. But
All right. Yes, we have another wonderful framing device, a pair of sinister gnarled trees flank each side of this poster image, and their branches reach toward each other, creating, oh, almost like a face, considering the reflected moon that we see shining above. And between the trunks of these menacing arboreal creature-esque things is a hulking brute of a something, an amphibian-looking something standing amongst those. Oh wow. I had a word for what those are.
reeds, willow,
Reeds, certainly, yeah, they have the little the hot dog shaped things at the end, which man, one day I'll look at a nature book. But anyhow, centered here, kind of looming in the middle distance with an almost, some sort of illustrated type cast title of this feature is the titular character of this found footage horror film, Frogman.
yes. And once more, the it's a fake video post or it's a real poster, but it's old old style VHS style poster, and there's the illusion. It creates the illusion there are two yellowish eyes caused by the moon reflection in the top. So it looks a little like a face if you back off a frog
Yeah,
face.
and right above this is the chilling tagline, "The Croaks are no hoax."
Right. And so, yeah, we don't really know too much about this movie. You haven't seen it. It's coming out on VOD, oh, probably yesterday as you listen to this, um, because we're taping this before it's actually come out on VOD on Thursday. And on Friday, it should be out. Some viewers, early reviewers, described it as weird or bizarre. We're a little skeptical about that. I think they might be just talking about the creature design. Not 100% sure, but we have our hopes up, I guess. Giles, you have seen the trailer.
Yeah, the trailer certainly suggests that as a found footage horror with a um, silly premise. It certainly looks promising to fill, that role as a movie. Lots of um, brave amateur filmographers going out to prove that this haunting entity exists out in the swamps of whatever backward area this is set in. So I think it definitely has an audience. I quite liked their earlier um, promotional campaign where they made two very limited prints of two different VHS copies that when we looked at it weeks ago had already sold out, um, well sold out. And so uh, there are the intersection between horror fans and 366 fans, I'm guessing, is kind of wide because horror does allow a lot of things that more mainstream cinema doesn't, and so I think this looks good. As to whether it will be weird, I am less optimistic.
Yeah, it's a found footage spoof, and about a cryptid, Frogman cryptid, and based on the trailer, it's all played very straight. It's not jokey or full of gags at all. It's all played straight, and the any humor is going to come from the absurdity of the premise, but the characters are all going to play it straight, which is the way you should do it, I think,
Yeah.
if you're working with this budget and you don't have Will Ferrell and Jim Carrey to be your actor.
Right. Yeah, this is the kind of thing that, shall we say, new actors on the scene are always good for this exercise. The only other horror movie I can think of that has this particular animal is was it from the 70s? Frogs
Yeah,
with
Frog.
Sam Elliott, which was unfortunately more boring than anything else if I remember the one time I watched it, because frankly, as much as there were ultimately a whole bunch of frogs, they don't even have the scare sway of birds, for instance. So this looks quite a bit more lively and almost definitely scarier.
Yeah, frogs aren't that scary. I mean, you might eat a poisonous toad by accident, I suppose.
Yeah.
They don't have teeth, I think.
They don't have teeth. They're quite small. I imagine Frogman probably is differently developed, but
They can slap you with their webbed fingers, I guess. But so yeah, frogs are inherently unscary, I think, which is maybe why they chose Frogman as their uh, villain, their big monster. So that's Frogman, and then one more. This has already been out on VOD and now comes to Blu-ray for the first time. Giles described the cover here.
there's quite a bit going on in this cover here. I'll start with the middle this time, as I've been avoiding that with the other posters. In the center, we have a young girl, probably somewhere between 6 and 8, if I were to hazard a guess, wearing just a little girl's dress and shoes, and she's kind of standing amidst this. Oh, who is that? Blake. Yeah, the artist Blake comes to mind with regards to the color scheme and general unsettling, milky jaggedness of the backdrop for her. There on the left-hand side of the image, there are some sort of discarded, breaking down machine-looking motifs. To the right-hand side, in some bluer tones, there is a distressed-looking slash distressing-looking individual, prominent character in this particular feature. Also, some electricity, electrical devices looming in the background. And just behind the little girl is a dark cave with a toothy looking lamp just above it, and looming over that with what looks like a small waterfall of blood coming from the shoulder spilling out over this entryway is a humanoid entity with a high black collar, a hat of unknown provenance, kind of looks like maybe a train conductor's hat, but dark, bleak, and leather, and no face on this entity, just two rows of almost smiling evil teeth.
Mm. And of
And
course, that would be Moon Garden, the
Moon Garden, yes,
very
which,
low budget but Terry Gilliam-esque little fantasy that Giles, I believe, quite liked.
yeah, looks like I reviewed this about almost 10 months ago now, with the screener we got our hands on, and I was quite pleased. I recommend it, and every time I've read my review and remembered it again, it's like I recommend it still. Terry Gilliam influences to be sure. Frank Mosely plays a pretty big role in regards to the sinister little bits of machinery and otherwise kind of occasional miniatures feel found throughout this. And I describe it a dark, vibrant movie for children and a perfect gateway into weird cinema. I believe this would hold its own next to the likes of Ink. And it's certainly not nearly as distressing, though, as creative as Gilliam's Tideland, which is much more mature and in its way emotionally a lot darker than this. But similarly, the young female fearless girl protagonist, which is an archetype I've enjoyed for some years now. So yes, I do recommend Moon Garden, which is now out on Blu-ray.
Yeah, I think those are two touchstones, two good touchstones for it. Neither, it's not quite like either one of it's sort of like a blend in between uh, both of them. Obviously, it doesn't have the budget of a Tideland, but it has more budget than Ink had. So I think, at least based on the production design, which I think is what is really outstanding about Moon Garden, I wasn't as impressed with the narrative, I don't think, as you were, Giles. I just thought it was a little, little unfocused. It's just, going from it's a girl cast into a fantasy world, so it's kind of like the Alice in Wonderland thing where you can just wander from one little set piece to another set piece on the way to an ending.
A fair point.
That sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. All your set pieces need to be really great for it to work. I certainly wouldn't say don't see it. I mean, I think, like I say, for the production design alone, I think it's worthwhile. Um, Anything else to say on that or on any other topic, Giles?
No, I don't think so. I guess coming up soon in Nepotism Corner, I've worked once again with my anarcho leftist musicians from Canada. A narration of mine about Rip Van Winkle, that they are changing their general bleak tune into something much more banjo-y for this one. So I'll be leaning on Greg to drop a link to that. But that self-aggrandizement aside, I don't have anything further before we talk to the affable Texans.
Okay, I thought you were going to do a review of for another outlet of.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm going to be chatting with that buddy of mine. We're loosely scheduled for this Sunday, so I will have to see it before then. And yeah, we're going to talk about the latest Lorthamos. Oh gosh, what's it called?
Poor Things, right?
Yeah, Poor Things, which is totally new to me and recently new to him, and hopefully with our two pairs of glasses combined, we'll have lots of really great, insightful things to say about that. So yes, that is forthcoming.
And one more thing that you can still vote in the Weird Academy Awards up until Sunday, when we will release the award winners. There are only a couple of races that are still competitive, but if you haven't voted, you can only vote once. So if you haven't voted, go to 366weirdmovies.com and look for that. Maybe I'll drop a link to that. Competitive races are weirdest short and weirdest actor. The other ones are probably pretty well decided. Weirdest movie is going to be a landslide, and weirdest actress is definitely going to be landslide.
Yeah,
Even large,
overcoming that, I'd be impressed.
yeah.
And
So,
yeah, and props to the one person who's seen The Cow Who Sang a Song into the Future.
well, I saw it, but I didn't.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
think I voted for of. I think I have a suspicion as who voted for that. Anyway, that's that. Let's bring out Pete Ohs and crew from Love and Work, and we'll see you in just a moment. No time at all will pass for you, although quite a bit of time may pass for us. See you soon. Bye.
See ya.
Hello, and we are back with the cast and crew of Love and Work, a new low-budget, minimalist, absurdist comedy about a alternate reality in which it is illegal to work and the secret society of job seekers who form an underground network seeking employment.
Network, exactly.
Yes, yes. And so the first thing I think we should do is simply have everyone introduce themselves, starting with Pete, and then we'll go around clockwise.
My name is Pete Ohs. I am the director, producer, and one of the writers of Love and Work.
I'm Will Maddin. I'm one of the co-writers and actor in Love and Work.
I'm Frank Mosely, and I'm one of the actors in Love and Work. I play the role of Hank.
All right, Hank the boss.
Hank the boss, that's right.
So when looking at this after watching the movie, naturally a number of things come to mind. I'd like to ask about the locations. I'd like to ask about the music. But I think because of the nature of the film seems to exist almost entirely to ask the audience to ask themselves questions about work and about the role of work in your life. And so I thought, let's just jump into the theme. And so I guess a way to start is to ask you all, do you like to work, and what kind of work do you like to do?
I mean, for me, yes, I love to work, and then I would identify as a workaholic, really. It is, and I get so much out of it. It's where I have my favorite relationships, or how those have blossomed in my life. It also helps me fight depression is by working. Also it supports me. It just pays the bills and puts food on my table. It fulfills so many of my essentials in life that I really do love work.
Okay. Will.
Yeah, I do too. I think I would also identify as a workaholic. I feel like work is good because it gets me out of my house and it gets me interacting with other humans, and it kind of I think in a way similar to my character Bob Fox, he loves this sort of community and fellowship and social interacting of work, whether it's creative or otherwise. For me, I think it's just healthy in a lot of ways. So I think anything that kind of gets me out of myself and into collaborating with other people is always the better option. So try to throw myself into work, whether I feel like it or not. I know it's good for me at the end of the day.
Frank.
Yeah, third workaholic over here. We're all part of the same club. I love to work, but I think I find a real distinction between working in film, which is one of my jobs, but then I also have lots of other jobs that I do on the side. Like I'm a substitute teacher of elementary school kids, and I love that because it gets me out of my film talk zone that I'm used to. You have a shorthand with people in the film industry, and you have to work with an entirely different group of people, with children. And so you develop, I think, with every job you had, you learn to develop a kind of communication skill and a shorthand that pertains to that job, but then you can hopefully apply that language to many other jobs that you have, just to communicate more effectively, and then hopefully also out of that develop great relationships like what Pete and Will were talking about.
And I also really think like the most beautiful thing of work is that it can give us a purpose. It can give us a purpose in life. And then when work becomes a job, it starts to become bad when it's not just that it's something we don't want to do, it's when we start to sense that it's not necessary, it's not needed, it's busy work. And I think that's when starts to become disconnected from this potentially purposeful activity and just an empty waste of time.
I'm glad you added that, because although I love to work too, you love to work on things that you love to work on. You don't just love to work on any old thing. And there's a distinction between a work and a vocation and something that's just a job.
Yeah. I usually say I love to work, but I don't want a job.
There's a lot of satire of the sort of office, although it's not set in an office, there's an office dynamic there. And there seems to be a lot of satire of the interview process and some workplace rituals in it. Giles, do you have a question?
Oh, just a quick dive in here before we explore the film further. I suspect that Greg and I are talking with three extroverted individuals here. You certainly agreed to come and chat with us and are talking about the joys of people at work. I was curious if you got input from any more introverted types in regards to how they felt about work, especially since they, as a sort of general rule, less enthusiastic about some of the dynamics you mentioned.
I hear you. I don't know if I actually would identify as an extrovert. Certainly opportunities to talk about the work, to talk about these things that we love is fun. But I also am a person who really loves and values alone time. Being by myself, that is kind of like where I recharge my batteries. And did we talk to other people? I feel like the research for love and work is really just like living our lives and all the jobs we've ever had and all these sort of things. But with the awareness that different people do get different things out of jobs. Some people get like the social aspect of it. Some people don't. Some people like it for other reasons entirely. And that awareness was some of the things we would talk about when defining each of these different characters, what it is about the job that about doing work that they're specifically getting out of it.
Yeah, Diane certainly was very different from Fox in her hopes with this underground activity.
Yeah, I think I can relate to Diane as well. I think a lot, being sort of half introverted and half extroverted, of her whole drive is about having purpose and having a thing to do, an accomplishment, and that almost has nothing to do with collaboration. It doesn't have to. And I can certainly relate to a lot of when you're making a movie and you're acting in something or writing, it's like you're often just alone creating something for days, weeks, months on end. And there's a different kind of joy in that kind of introverted revelry, like being alone with your thoughts and putting it into something else. It's a different kind of safety and freedom, and being like, I'm alone working on my thing. and I'm sort of free to explore anything and everything. And that's a kind of different introverted joy that I certainly can jive with as well.
What about you, boss man?
Once again, I kind of echo the sentiments of my buddies over here. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call myself an extrovert. Not to give any spoilers away with the film, but I think I appreciate a healthy balance between having my alone time and having your time off, and then knowing when you have to put in the work so that you can prepare for that, and then you can give to it fully, and you can fully invest in the work when you are doing it. So you're not half-assing it, in any way. And to kind of echo what Will said too, yeah, I think there's a part of me that loves writing. Like, I love writing and I like editing films, and those are very solo activities that I do. But then I love being on set and directing and acting with other people. It's a totally different kind of joy you get from that kind of creative work, but I like both.
Thanks. Yeah, glad you mentioned balance, and I'll consider myself 1.5 out of 3 for my prediction there. That's a sort of a later point. Greg and I were curious about like the inception of this. This is a narrative exercise. It's an exploration of a certain idea that I haven't generally seen explored elsewhere. Would you be able to speak briefly on what sort of triggered you to pursue this fairly unique narrative here?
Yeah, so this movie and the movies I've been making lately, they always have first started with a location, just the location as being a place that's narratively inspiring in some way, and visually interesting, like a place I would want to film. And so I saw this warehouse space where the first shoe factory takes place, which was being managed by this really wonderful artist residency in Texas, in Corsicana, Texas. And they presented this space to me and said, if you have any ideas for this, let us know, and you're free to play. This was, when I first saw that space, it was February 2021, I think, actually. It's when I first saw the space. And that planted a seed, but also that seed got planted. We're still kind of pandemicing at that point. We're still getting our I think we were still getting like the government stipend, or maybe they had just sort of ended. It's like the like existence that we had been experiencing of not working and just having all this time and what to do with it was very present in my mind at the time. And then I think also, and the thing that we're now even more into is the AI of it all, which is like the work that is being done by other things, and what does that mean for the things we're going to be spending our time doing, and just that we're just all these things that are obviously happening in the world. And so like just like that present moment and responding to it while standing in this literal physical space is kind of where all the atoms collided to birth Love and Work, which eventually blossomed through the collaboration with the actors who are also writers, and pitching just that little bit of an idea of these seeds with Will and with Stephanie. And then through those conversations, we figured out what the story was going to be. But that's the start.
So, I mean, we all agree that we like the work, but I think the movie is not the movie. We identify with the workers in the movie, the people who want to work against the oppressive society that's not allowing them to work. But yet there is certainly a level of pathology to these workers, and they are like drug addicts. And we specifically see, I think, Frank at one point it's like withdrawing in an alley, because he wants to work so bad and he can't work. So I think it's pretty open-ended in that and this was maybe leading to the conclusion or the purpose of the movie, but there is certainly, I think, would you all agree, a pathological element to the workers in this movie, despite the fact that there are heroes.
Yes, heroes.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think it's all it's a spectrum, right? I think it's a varying degrees of obsession. that binds all these people in this underground way. And that's actually maybe my favorite thing about the whole film, and about the whole idea, is that all these people that are bound by this addiction and obsession, and to what degrees do they fall, and to what degrees do they kind of rise up and try to redefine those terms, you know?
Yeah, I think like I think we say like workaholism a lot, and in varying stakes and ways. So many of us can identify as workaholics, whether we like it or not. But it's also something that can be very dangerous and very harmful to like ourselves and people around us. And it's part of what was the most, to me, the most sort of interesting and fun part to explore in the movie, of like, where has this become like a dangerous thing to ourselves, and when does it become an unhealthy thing, and what's the balance between how much you're willing to sort of risk and put aside and neglect, sometimes, like, you know, choosing work over relationships or over your own physical health, to engage in something that you have a compulsion to do, and weighing how much is that something really genuinely giving you something, or is it just behavior that's now become kind of a repetitive pattern that's can be harmful. And that's sort of the interesting sort of darker undertone that I really sort of like in the film.
I think we all like we're all sort of like happily identifying as workaholics, but I think we're also just products of our capitalistic society that we live in, and like, you know, we are reacting to what's around us, and I don't think it's healthy for our society that we all can identify as workaholics. I wish there was more balance within our lives, such that I didn't feel like I needed the work to give me a reason to live. You know, I don't, you know, this is what I see in the world. This is what I see within myself. This is what certainly the art that we've made is reflecting and pondering and trying to understand what to do about it.
Yeah. And just picking up on that a little, within the movie, the work that the characters do is worthless. It's just work to do work. It's make work, because the premise is that, you know, everything is automated, and all products, you have enough products, you don't need any more shoes, and yet they simply work making unneeded shoes just so they can work. Does that I hate to, you know, bring this into a critique of capitalism thing, but was that something that was on your mind?
Oh yeah, I'm often publicly identifying as anti-capitalist. The thing that I often find myself thinking about the world and people and the situation that we have arrived at and have created for ourselves is that it's very confusing. And I think we're all quite confused. And people who think they love work, like in the characters in this movie who seem to love work, and that they're making things that aren't needed, and they're just so disconnected, which I think is also a thing that I feel from our world and our society. And we have all of our technology, and we have all of our Zoom calls, and we think we're more connected than ever. And I think very much we are not. You know, I think we are less connected than ever, from the healthy things. So these people making shoes for no reason is the point. Like, we are doing things, and why are we doing them? We're not, we've lost the thread. We have taken our hands off the wheel or something.
Yeah, it sort of reminds me, last time I saw this, it was still Slam Dance days, so I guess this stuck in my memory pretty well. The montage for Diane's character when she's asked her favorite job, and you see the 3 or 4 dozen professions that she has partaken in over the course of her life, and it dives back, I think, to the very first one.
Yes.
Indicated on the title card of what she felt was most worth her while, which was, yes, sort of useless production, but to a more heartwarming purpose than crafting shoes. And also, I guess, considering the nature of the product in question, something about what is going to be happening with the future, since what she most enjoyed producing was for the younger generation, of whom we see absolutely none. I think
Mhm.
everyone in this movie is around your guys' age, except for a couple older characters who uh, wax sort of poetical about what their parents
Mhm.
told them about the old days when it was just all work and
Mhm.
nothing else. So yes, again with balance, which of course leads up to that what I feel is the ultimate purpose of this movie. But if I might dive back briefly to the dark, you mentioned like a dark side of things. I was absolutely intrigued by the malevolent sort of element in this film in the form of the reminders. I was hoping that you might be able to chat a little bit about their inception and maybe a little further what they're kind of up to, because they're just kind of there and respected, but as with much in this movie, it's, you know, sort of left to the viewer to try to conceptualize the gaps there.
Yeah. What do you remember about the inception of the reminders of these authority figures?
I mean, I remember we talked about the characters kind of having this childlike innocence and naivete, where they're sort of playing at the office roles and the archetypes of having a job, almost like kids playing office after seeing their parents come home with, you know, in their suits or whatever, and thinking about like these characters, you know, what would it take to be really threatening to these people, and almost like a parental figure coming in with, we have found these orange vests and just kind of, you know, sternly shaming them was sort of like incredibly high stakes for these characters, and being put in, you know, the timeout center and being literally put in timeout, and kind of that was enough to really shake, you know, imbue the fear of them, you know, and the stakes of how dangerous it is for them to be secretly, you know, doing this activity and having 3 strikes, and just like these things that were such huge deals when we were little kids, that were terrifying to be put in timeout or during recess or whatever. So I remember being, you know, when we were coming up with the idea of who's policing this place, who are the government officials, etc. That that it almost takes form in sort of like stern teachers coming in to sort of break up the party, and that's sort of all it took in a society where, you know, however the algorithms and govern wherever this you know, oppressive authoritarianism, you know, government comes into place, all they need to really put to freak us out is pretty low stakes to our society, but something that would freak these people out. Just kind of being parents coming in to shame us in a way.
I remember that being tied in even with our wardrobe search when we were all going out to the thrift stores together to find the wardrobe that matched our characters. And when I remember first going in, I remember, oh, I got to find something. If this guy wants to be a boss so much, he's got to have clothes that fit him because he wants to look presentable and like really like put together. And Pete was like, no, no, no. He's like, it's even better if it's like a baggy shirt 3 times your size and, you know, looking like Charlie Chaplin. He goes, because then you really are playing dress up. Um, and we never talked about what happens after you get so many strikes. It just keeps, it's like a cyclical nature. Um, it's funny because then it just takes on such a playful tone within the world, but then I feel like that playful tone permeates the actual experience of watching the movie, and it has a very playful tone because of the gamesmanship, the kind of games that are in hand in this childlike way. There's like an innocence to it, and you know, a little slap on the wrist kind of tone with the reminders.
I also remember like a lot of early conversations were often around like what is a job? Um and even with these people who are essentially police officers in this world, you know, these authority figures, the reminders, it's like, well, aren't they doing a job? And it's kind of confusing, but we do clarify it in the in the movie. But it is rooted in this idea of just like people are always going to need things to do. Like everyone needs something to do. That's why we have streaming services, because it's like, what are we going to do? We just need to keep filling time. And as we have AI to do all these things for us, we end up with more and more free time. And so it's like, well, let's get more and more content on our screens so that we can just fill that time. not healthily, but we are needing to fill that time. And so to like recognize that one of the ways that some people are going to fill time is not necessarily some sort of like self-sufficient activity. It's going to be going around and like raining on other people's parades. like that's going to be somebody's choice for how to spend their time.
Yeah,
Well, and just like, and like, luckily within this societal framework, what their way of spending their time is allowed, is like supported, is beneficial to the machines, to the AI, but you know, the people who are doing these things that aren't necessarily helpful to the AI's end goal, those things are not so allowed.
Yeah, keeping the busybody class busy, I suppose, is probably one of the top things for any control-inspired individuals. Keeping checks on those. Yeah. The reminders were absolutely fascinating. The hall monitors of the world going around,
right,
and giving people strikes for being naughty is.
And you know, and like people are power hungry too, like just like it's a human thing to like want power over people, and it's probably because of some insecurity that they have, and but it's so real. There's so many people that do that, and when I see them, I wonder what is going on. Why is that? How they're choosing to spend their time, what they do.
So you talked about AI, and I suppose in this future, that's the explanation for the reason why people don't have to work. But it does, you know, also pose a question of how close are we to this reality? Because we always, you know, technology always saves labor, and people lose jobs, and it is possible, certainly, to imagine a future where there isn't work for most people. You know, if you want to do creative work, that's fine. If you don't, then what happens to you? I mean, what are you going to do?
Also, the AI is taking the creative work too. You know, they're actually taking the jobs we want, but they're not taking the jobs we don't want. I mean, I don't, like, we are there already, you know. It's like, how close are we? Like, we're kind of there. Every morning, when I leave my apartment, my neighbor, like in the door of my neighbor's apartment across the hallway, there's like a DoorDash bag waiting of like whatever their boxes of food for that day is. And in Love and Work, you know, in this movie, there's these like paper sacks of lunches just like sitting around. And when we did it, I hadn't actively seen, just because like what my living situation was, I hadn't had these like DoorDash delivery services as like kind of present in my mind as we're doing this. And it's like, well, where do those bags come from? And we're like, I don't know, like a drone or something drops them off, or just like, who knows, you know. The AI figured that out, and magically somehow every morning something has dropped off my neighbor's meals for the day. Like, it's already happening, like we are there. It's something I definitely think about a lot, of like, what are we going to do with our time, you know, as the AI does more things, and we're like kind of fighting back, but we also don't want jobs. Like, also people like who have a job, like, but like we like complaining about a job. That's the other good thing that you get out of having a job, is you get to complain about it. So I often just wonder, like, what problems are we trying to solve, and what is it serving? Because I often don't think it's actually serving. I think it's lately serving humans. I think it's
Certainly not
serving,
many humans anyway.
yes. What do you guys think? I feel like I'm talking a lot.
No.
You are the director.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
good, like every sort of utopia, you know, the great novels and movies and stuff. It's like, oh, it's a utopia, and then the story unfolds and you figure out it's a dystopia. And there's something about this, as you know, like what you said, Pete, about, you know, AI in our, we're not just having robots pick out plastic out of the ocean. We're having them write screenplays, right? We're having them do the creative work that, you know, in my idea of a utopian society, great, we've got UBI, we've got food, everybody's covered, we're all great, and now we can revel and play and make make art. But where we're heading is like they're sort of taking care of everything and not giving us what we need. So it's sort of like this. Well, what's even the point of all this of injecting the algorithms and AI to take care of us if we're not going to be free to explore and do what we actually want to do and live in the Star Trek, utopia that we hope to be in. So it's just fun and interesting to sort of ask those questions around, because I think like, wow, if I had rent covered, everything covered, health's great, medicine, science, we're all groovy, let's act and make movies. But if it's like, but you can't do that because the robots are also doing that, you have to kind of sit in your room and just exist. That's kind of the
just watch the content that the robots made for you.
Yeah.
Watch the AI Netflix show that's awful, but it's been 50 years since there's been something good because it's all AI stuff in the future. So we don't know the difference between what's good and not. So we just matrix plug into the machine.
The robots are like, but you love it. Like, we based it off of what you like. You should love everything we're showing you right now.
Yeah.
But they'll still be the ragtag theater groups and alleys, just like in this film, like trying to have live theater performances. It's like, what's the Pixar movie where the people are like in the bubbles and they float around? Was it WALL-E?
And the end of WALL-E.
That terrified me. That terrified me. Like that, I fester if I don't have something to work on. So the idea of something leading toward this world of WALL-E where everything's just given to you, you just absorb things to live, but you're not really living or having that kind of activity and execution from an idea in your mind, and you apply it and you actually create or you finish a task. I find that frightening for me personally. So like when I saw that WALL-E, it was like a horror film all of a sudden.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I think it's certainly important to everybody to have a good balance of short-term gratification, which you get from leisure and doing things you enjoy, and to also have long-term gratification that you get from working and then achieving something and then getting a sort of much less frequent, but sort of deeper gratification. And you need both in your life, which I think is what the film is arguing for. And, we are, as we record this, we are approaching the weekend. So perhaps, do you guys all looking forward to the weekend? It's a little in joke, I guess, but
I hear it's the answer to all your troubles.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm still spiritual journey to finding what the weekend is for me, because in the literal sense, I'm always working on the weekend, whether it's a service gig or auditions or acting jobs or something. So I just have never had a feeling, maybe since high school, have I had a feeling that Friday like means something exciting. It's like always been like my weekends are like Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. So I always feel like when I'm kind of free, everyone else is at work, and then when the weekend comes, I'm sort of working. But I was gonna say a quick point of like that I just thought about having a while of like it's like the green zones or blue zones around the world where people live to be like well into over the hundreds. And they did this study where they saw all the different societies where people just had these full, healthy, long lives. And they did the Venn diagram. What are all these places around the world doing the same? And some of them was like specific diet, sort of Mediterranean sort of diets, or having grandchildren in their lives. But I remember a big part of it was like these people who continue to have a job or a craft that they worked at like every day, and that gave them a purpose and a discipline and something to do, that it wasn't just you turn 70, 80, these days, 70, 80, 90 and retire and then just kind of sit around twiddling your thumbs, but continue to really have something that gives you purpose and discipline. And that brings something to your life to make you healthier and live longer. Something really interesting about that maybe the science is still out, jury's out on that, but something to think about.
I definitely miss the weekend. And I know part of it is because I don't work a traditional job where I don't have that kind of like structure of what work days are and weekends are. And I do also remember how good it felt back when I was in school, and you did have this like feeling of Friday, and then you also had this terrible feeling as Sunday was ending, that you're like, oh no, it's going back. But like that kind of like is healthy, I think, to like feel those things. And again, to bring up the kind of like weird era that we lived through of the pandemic, when for that time we also even more so got this like wash of all days are the same, work days, weekends, and I just don't think that's I don't think that's ideal for. It makes the good times not as good. It makes the bad times not, I don't. It's just like it just flattens everything. And it's because of the rat race that I'm in. Like I can always justify working through the weekend. I feel this thing in my brain says like, no, this is your chance to get ahead. This is your chance to, catch up with whatever it may be. And I want to break that. And I kind of have to actively say no to working through the weekend, for my own mental benefit, even though it like doesn't feel right. It feels wrong to like not work for 2 days.
All right. Well, we got just under 4 minutes left. So quickly, I would like to ask you guys, what is the future for the movie Love and Work? Is it going to be available? Do you have any immediate plans for it?
Its immediate plans is it's going to be playing some more film festivals. Next up is Film Fort, this film festival we really love in Boise, Idaho. And it'll play some other festivals domestically and internationally throughout the year. And then hopefully we'll secure some sort of release distribution thing. At the very least, I will just put it on the internet so people can watch it. But in the current state, it's doing its little festival run.
Wonderful. Well, we like to close on a question, and since there are 3 of you, we're going to have to kind of dive through this quickly. If you could
Great.
answer these for me, what's your hometown, and can you recommend a restaurant there?
Findlay, Ohio. Yeah, Findlay, Ohio, small town in Northwest Ohio, and I would recommend Wilson's. It is the original. The urban legend is that it's the original Wendy's, that Dave Thomas went to Wilson's, ate that hamburger, and said, "This is I'm going to copy."
I'm from Peachtree City, Georgia, south of Atlanta, and Ted's Montana Grill. That's the place I used to go to. Great burgers. It's right in a shopping center. It's a great day.
Arlington, Texas, right there nestled between Dallas, Fort Worth, and there's a place that popped up called Corky's Pizza around the time I was in college. It's on the south side of town, and they have the wood brick oven fired pizzas that they pull out. And pretty much every time I go back home and see my parents and family, we try to go out there, get some dinner. So highly recommend that if you get a chance to check it out.
Thanks. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, we do have just a minute left to say goodbye. So I would like to say it was really a pleasure to talk to you. It didn't feel like work at all to sit here.
You could feel the love.
Thank you very much for being here. And we know you had some other movies that we didn't even get to talk to from the past that I think you had all worked on. But hopefully we'll see you again in the future. And so I'm going to say goodbye and thank you very much.
Thank you very much as well.
Thank you.
Don't work too hard.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Take care. Thank you.
Thanks.
It's a great time.